So welcome to a series that I'm doing. It's called The Startup with the HashiCorp stack. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Rob Barnes. Some may know me as DevOps Rob. I'm a senior developer advocate at HashiCorp. Now, this series it's about kind of a fake startup. I was looking at our tools and I was looking at how developers use our tools and how engineers use our tools and what it looks like. And I kind of decided to make up a startup. We're calling it Assets Atlas, and we're basically going to build a product and use the Hashi stack to, what's the tagline? Is it build, secure, run, whatever the tagline is. I can't remember the tagline. But yeah, this is going to be super cool because, predominantly I've focused in the area of security, and, everyone knows me for Vault. More recently, people are starting to know me for Boundary. But now we're going to delve into some of the other tools in the Hashi stack that I don't really use that much. So, I might be as green to some of these things as some of you all that are watching and listening to this. So it's going to be a journey. We're going to go through it all and we'll see what we can learn together. That's it really. So I think the best way to kind of describe what it is that we're going to be doing to start off with is if I just head over to here. So I'll hit you up with some architecture. So basically Assets Atlas it's an app essentially, right? It's an app that does some financial things. And for any app to work, you're going to need to be able to register users and you're going to need to be able to authenticate users. But with, the rise in cyber crimes and attacks and data theft and so on and so forth, it's kind of been proven that the traditional username and password for users, it's not enough. It's easy enough to brute force that if you know what you're doing. So what we need a second factor of authentication, right? So, people are using different things to do that. So this app, we're going to focus at the moment on the kind of user sign up and the login journey, and how we're going to verify like email addresses, how we're going to verify phone numbers, so on and so forth, all that kind of stuff there. And then we'll use that for multi-factor authentication, right? So just to start off with, we're just going to use this tool we have here. Let's just get our library. If the library will open, yes, it will. And let's see. So the way it will work is we will have two services, right? So we will have, I don't know if this is the right thing, or maybe I'll just draw a box for it, right? So we'll have, okay, and this is going to be an API service. Maybe we'll make this a bit wider. And we'll have another service, which maybe we'll just copy this, and this is going to be the verification, if I can spell, verification service. And let's see if we can make this a bit wider so it doesn't look all funky. Right, okay, so this API service is going to be responsible for a couple of things, right? So it's going to be responsible for handling the API calls where users are going to register for an account. It's also going to be responsible for the authentication piece of things. Let's see if we can just write some of this stuff down here. So it's going to be for creating accounts and login in. Right, so those are two primary use cases for this service here. Let's see if we can just move this along a little bit, right? Okay. Now, we talked about security, right? So we have users, when they log in, give a username, give a password, but normally we want to send like a short-lived one-time code to something that we trust, right? So it could be a phone number via text message, it could be an email address. But in order for us to trust it, we need to verify that they actually do own that phone number or they actually do own that email address, right? So this verification service does exactly that, right? It verifies that you do own the phone number, that you do own the email address, and also acts as the thing that's going to facilitate our multi-factor authentication, right? So let's just pop that in here. So this is going to be SMS verification, if I can spell it. And it's also going to be email verification. I managed to spell that too. Amazing. Cool. So those are the two services. I actually have built one of those services here. Let's see if I can actually give you a quick preview of that. I think it's here. Yeah. So I've built the service. I'm not going to bother going through the code at the moment. We can go through that in a future episode or something. But this verification service, it pretty much has two endpoints, right? It has an endpoint where it will send a one-time password to either a email or SMS. And the other endpoint is a verification endpoint. So this is where the user would enter their one-time password that they've received, and it will verify whether that's correct or not, or whether it's expired, so on and so forth. You know, the usual MFA malarkey, right? So we have those two endpoints. In order for this service to run, there are a few environment variables we need to set. So this service is basically operating using Twilio, and it's also using SendGrid. So Twilio is handling the SMS side of things, and SendGrid is handling the email side of things. And the two are integrated. So, you know, by setting things up on Twilio, I can just create an integration to SendGrid, because I even think it's Twilio that even owns SendGrid. Now, my original idea for this service was to use HashiCorp Vault. To use those of you that don't know, we have a secrets engine called the one-time password. Let me even show it to you if I can. I'll show you HashiCorp Vault. Secrets engine, I think this is what it's called. Yeah, so this is it here, right? So the one-time password, let me see if I can boost this. So basically this does a couple of things, right? This is really sick, but I'll tell you why I opted not to go with this for this app, right? It can generate one-time passwords in order for you to introduce multi-factor authentication into your applications, right? So essentially, you can give someone a QR code. You can generate a QR code with this, and they can use that on your authenticator app, and it will start the whole time-based one-time password generations and regenerations and refreshes, so on and so forth. And you can use that to integrate within your application. It's full API support. So once the user has set that up, they can enter it, and then there'll be an API call to Vault, which will verify whether that code is correct or not. And based on the response on that, you can allow them in, or you can say access denied, so on and so forth. It's pretty sick, right? So you've got it as a provider. So it can act as the one-time password providers, which is kind of what I was talking about. Or you can kind of use it as, how do you say, as a generator, right? So you could, if you've got some other kind of provider that's providing one-time passwords or passcodes, and you want to use Vault as a generator for these one-time passcodes, you can set it up like that as well. You know, I've messed around with this so much, it's super cool. Now, the reason why I didn't go with this is because the user experience that I wanted was not for people to have to install an authenticator app in order for this to work, right? I would rather it sends, like, let's just say they're accessing this app through a mobile device or something like that and they get an SMS as a one-time password, a lot of the time you don't even have to leave the app. You can literally just in your notifications hit copy and you can paste it directly into the app and you're good to go, right? So the UX I wanted was to keep users within the app, whether you're using desktop or whether you're using the mobile. Now, obviously with desktop, it may be a little bit more difficult to provide that UX, but that's the first thing. The second thing is, okay, if we want to deliver that UX, you've also got to consider, how do I say this? If I get Vault to generate one-time passwords, right? And you can configure these passwords to be as long-lived or short-lived as you want, right? It can be 2 minutes, it can be 15 minutes, entirely up to you, right? I now need a mechanism. If I'm not going to make users use an authenticator app, I now need a mechanism for them to be able to receive that code in order to input it into their screen, and we can make an API call to verify whether that's correct or not, right? So this is actually how I came across SendGrid, because I was looking for email providers, and then I realized that SendGrid actually has this whole verify, and Twilio has this whole verify API where it kind of does the whole thing as well as the delivery of that one-time password. So if you want to use authenticator apps, use Vault. It's free and open source, or if you're already using HCP Vault, then that's cool. But if you need that delivery mechanism, yeah, you can still use Vault and then get some sort of email backend or use something like Twilio for SMS. But if we're going to be pragmatic, what's the point? If that's the use case you're going after, you might as well just use Twilio, right? So that's pretty much what we're doing here. So the kind of idea here is we'll have some sort of load balancer. Let's see if I can even move that. Can I move that? Yeah, we'll have some sort of load balancer, and then let's just go to my library and see if we can get some sort of GUI or something like that. There we go. That's probably not a good representation of it. I'll just delete that because we don't need that. And essentially what will happen is, I thought I just saw, yes, I saw this. This is mobile. And what will happen is our users will do stuff using the either browser or mobile app or something like that. And these things here will send the traffic where they need to go, essentially, right? So very simple architecture, right? So here lays our first challenge, right? So like I say, I've already built the verification service. I spent last night building that. We'll go through the code another time. That's not really what's important today. The important thing is we need to run this microservice somewhere, right? We need to run it on something, and we can run it in the clouds using something like Cloud Run on GCP or Function Apps or whatever, or ECS. We can do that. We can do what seems to be many people's favorite choices these days, which is running it in Kubernetes. But I don't really want to do that. I work for HashiCorp and I played a little bit with Nomad, but not that much, right? So essentially, I want to mess around with Nomad a piece and see if we can get these services deployed to a Nomad cluster, which is going to be cool, right? There's a bunch of stuff I don't know about Nomad, so this is going to be a journey. We're going to learn some stuff, man. It's going to be cool. It's going to be super cool. So if I just kind of show you what I think that's going to look like, right? So we'll just, let's just move this screen a little bit. So move this over here. So I think the way this is going to work, and actually I came across this really cool library here. So we have Nomad here, right? So Nomad works in a whole server client kind of model, right? So we have, let's just, can I type in there? Oh no, I can't. Right, okay. So we have, let's get some text here. We have a Nomad server. Why did that not work? Let's go again. I'm not really sure what's going on. Why is Excalidraw not playing ball? I don't know why it's not playing ball. Anyway, we have a Nomad server here. We can replicate that. Nomad kind of supports clustering. So these here will be your servers. Let me actually just put a box around them. And this is weird. I don't really know why it's not really showing. Let's maybe try doing it down here, see if it makes a difference. We'll see. Okay, cool. So we'll try typing again. And it doesn't seem to want to play ball. It doesn't matter. We will, oh, there we go. So we have 3 Nomad servers here, and essentially what will happen is these will connect to some clients. So you can have as little or as many clients as you want. You obviously need a minimum of 1, and we'll, I'm not really sure why this arrow is not appearing. It's the first time using Excalidraw. We'll just delete that. Essentially, the top row is servers and the bottom row are clients. Now, servers are the things that are going to schedule our workloads. So when we say we have this verification service, run this, right? It's going to decide where the best place to run it is. And these clients are the actual machines that it's going to run on. So these can be VMs or whatever, right? So if you have like some restrictions, let's just say you want to run it as a Docker image. Well, the server will look for a client that has Docker installed on it, right? You know, if you want to run it as a, I don't know, we've written this in Go, right? So if it needs something specific to Go installed on the machine, you know, you can specify all these things in the Nomad job, and the server will decide where is best to run it, resources, whatever. If it turns out that where it's running it, for some reason, is probably not a good idea to run it there anymore, it will automatically migrate that to another client that is more suitable for it, right? So that's the basic premise of what it is. So our first task in our startup journey here is to deploy a Nomad cluster, right? Now, as developers, you know, we tend to want local development environments. So we're going to try and build a local development environment. So I know Nomad has, if I install the CLI, which I've got, I believe already. Let's have a quick look. Let's type in Nomad. And yes, I do have that. Let me see if it gives us the version. Oh, Nomad-version I need to do. And we'll see what version I got. 1.4.4. I'm not really sure how up to date that is. Let me just put in Google HashiCorp Nomad latest version and see if I'm behind or if I'm up to date. Okay, so it's not too bad. I'm on 1.4.4. 1.5 is out, so you know, well, we noticed that. Let me just upgrade that. So we'll just do a brew upgrade Nomad. So yeah, we can run this locally. We can do Nomad-dev. A lot of the HashiCorp tools have that functionality. But I think what I want to do is I want to create a repeatable environment that, you know, I can tear it down, spin it up as much as I want. And, you know, I don't really ever have to touch it unless I'm making enhancements to it. So yeah, that's just upgrading there. So what we're going to do is we're going to build something. Now, typically what I've used in the past is things like Docker Compose. The problem with Docker Compose is sometimes when you have like these kind of big stacks and you have dependencies between the two, you'll spin up a container. Let's just say Postgres, for example. You'll spin up a Postgres container And as soon as that container is deployed, it will mark it as ready, right? But maybe there's still a process going on inside that container where it's not ready to receive active connections, right? And this is where, for me, things like Docker Compose fall down, is that kind of low level integration between the different components in your app. It can be, when you start to get a bit more complicated in your use cases, it can be a bit of an annoyance, right? So I started using a tool called Shipyard. Shipyard's developed by two of my friends, Nicholas Jackson and Eric Veld. Shipyard's pretty cool because it operates in a similar way to Docker Compose, but you can add health checks and so on and so forth. You can check different things between them, right? But even Shipyard had its limitations. So Nick and Eric decided to build on top of everything that they knew from Shipyard, and they launched a new product which is called Jumppad. Let's actually head over to their site now and have a quick look. So Jumppad.dev, and it's like modern cloud native environments, right? The nice thing about Jumppad is the syntax, it looks just like Terraform. So if you're used to Terraform, then you'll be right at home, right? So what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and build a Nomad cluster using Jumppad. Now, Jumppad is super new. Like, I'm putting in pull requests and all that to help with documentation and so on and so forth at the moment. So some of the documentation might not be accurate or up to date, because I know what they've done is they ported the docs from Shipyard over to Jumppad. Because the flow of things is still the same, but they made some really significant enhancements, and it's just a case of going through the docs and upgrading them to Jumppad levels. So we're going to go through this. We're going to try and deploy a Nomad cluster, right? So if we just go through the docs, let me just zoom this up a little bit. Does it have a light mode and dark mode? Aha, that's nice. Shout out Nick and Eric. Light mode, dark mode. Normally I do dark mode, but on these kind of recordings and streams, it's probably a bit easier on your eyes if we do light mode. But yeah, let's go to get started. And this is all the stuff how you can install it. I've already got Jumppad installed, so I'm not going to run through all of this. Check it out, Jumppad.dev. Brilliant tool by two brilliant developers. So just let me know in the comments of the video if you've tried it out and what your thoughts are. But I personally think it's amazing. But anyway, what we can do here is we can create a number of resources here, right? So you can deploy things as containers, but the nice thing is they've actually got a resource which is a Nomad cluster, right? There's a helpful video here which we'll probably go through just to be sure. But essentially with this, we can, hopefully there's an example here. Is there an example at the bottom? Here we go, right? So this is a minimal example here, right? So you deploy a network resource. So it's just like Docker, it's like a Docker network. And then you deploy a Nomad cluster to that network, essentially. That's a minimal example. If we look at this more full-on example, we can specify how many clients we have. So in this one here, we have 3 nodes. We'll probably do the same. We can specify things like another resource is a Nomad job. So when we're actually ready to deploy our actual microservice, we can use this resource to deploy the job. And we can you can use things like ingress. So if we need people to be able to access this from maybe the public internet or from somewhere else, we can put an ingress rule in there that's going to allow the connectivity, right? We'll talk a little bit about connectivity as this series goes along, but for now, we want to see if we can deploy a Nomad cluster, right? So I'm literally going to copy this, and let's see if we can find ourselves a terminal. So we'll open a new workspace. This here, we'll do it as we'll create a folder called let's do it lowercase, the start up. All right, And inside here, we're going to create another folder, and this is going to be called Jumppad blueprints, right? These things, when we create these files with our definition of our local development environment, we refer to them as blueprints. So they're Jumppad blueprints, right? So we'll do Jumppad blueprints, right? And we'll operate within this folder here, right? Okay, cool. So the first thing we want to do is let's create a file. This is all HCL, right? It looks just like Terraform, but the file must be in HCL format, right? So if we create a file called network.hcl, and you can see it already comes up with the Terraform logo, and we'll save that. And I'll just paste this whole thing because I need that network thing, but actually we don't need any of this in this file because that's going in another file. So we'll delete that. And I hope this works because this looks very much like Shipyard's syntax, right? So what we'll do is we'll let's get terminal, new terminal, and we'll do Jumppad up, and let's see if we get any errors. All right, unable to network stanza. Okay, so this is one of the docs that we talked about where it kind of needs a bit of help. So by the way, if anyone wants to use this and you figure out that where you can improve the docs, we are welcoming pull requests, right? It's a massive effort to try and get the docs up to date. I try and do as much as I can, but we need all the help we can get. So stuff like this, you run into it and you figure out what the right syntax is, please just submit a PR. We'd really appreciate it. But let's head back to the docs and we'll go to a network resource and see where's network. Can we see network anywhere? There we go, network, all right. So yeah, you can already see, so the resource is a little bit different, right? So if we do that, copy that, and we'll just amend this. So you can see where the syntax has changed. This is old Shipyard syntax. This is the new syntax for Jumppad, right? So let's go again, Jumppad up. That's how you spin up your development environments, and we'll do that. And it looks like it has created that network. We don't have any errors there, right? So if we now create another file, which we're going to call nomad, oh, I hate capital letters, nomad, let's just call it nomad.hcl, right? And enter there. And let's go back to our example here, so nomad cluster, and there's actually a video up there which, you know, I can post a link for that in the description of this video. We just want to copy this, right? And we might have to tweak this a little bit just depending on a few things, right? So nomad cluster.dev, and I just want to double check that we've called the network cloud, right? So I'll just save that and we'll go back to network. And it's called local, right? So we're gonna have to call this local, otherwise we'll get an error. And let's do Jumppad up and see what happens. Now, don't know how long this is gonna take. It could take a while, hopefully not too long. But yeah, in the meantime, while we wait for that, let's just have a quick nose around the website. We'll just see how long is this video. Maybe we can watch the video. Let me just pause the music for a sec. And we'll have a quick goose of this video.
Let's take a look at the Nomad cluster resource.
So we'll have a quick look.
So the Nomad cluster resource allows you to create a Nomad cluster inside of a Docker container. You can specify a number of different options for the Nomad cluster. First one here that I've got defined is called client nodes. If I specify client nodes as a value of 0, then Jumppad will automatically create a Nomad cluster that
Let me
has a
pause it there for a
combined
second. Do you notice that Nick slipped up when he recorded that video and he almost called it Shipyard? It's Jumppad, people. It's Jumppad. But there you go. We'll continue.
server and client. If I specify client nodes as a value which is greater than 0, then it will create a dedicated server and additional client nodes for running the workloads. You can specify optional client configuration, and I'm using the output of a template here. You can see from the interpolation, which just looks like this. So I'm just going to configure the plugin for the client and set.
That is sick. And I'll tell you why, right? There's an integration between Nomad and Vault that allows you to pull secrets from Vault and inject it into your Nomad jobs, right? And the pathway to configuring that is through the Nomad configuration. So we'll get into that a little bit later as to what that looks like. But yeah, that is awesome. We continue anyway.
Some options there. You can also optionally specify some console configuration. If you're using Nomad with console, I can specify here some of the agent configuration which the node is going to use. The network. Now I have to specify the network because that is which network is the cluster going to be attached to. Jumppad will create a Docker network based on the network stanza that you define in your resource. It's then going to attach the cluster and all of the nodes to it. I can copy images. I can copy an image from my local Docker cache into the Nomad cluster. And this will save you from having to push an image if you're working on an application to a public registry if you only want to be able to test it on your local cluster.
That is sick. You've got to love that. That is sick. So now I don't need Docker Hub or anything like that just for local development. Yeah, sure. When you get to staging and production, you probably want to push it to some sort of registry somewhere. But just being able to just copy these images locally from your machine into the cluster so it can spin up and run, hats off to you.
And optionally, I can specify a volume. But let's kind of have a look at how this is going to work. So to create this, I'm going to do Jumppad up. I'm going to specify a variable because what I want to be able to do is override the client nodes variable. And I'm going to set that to 3 to create 3 nodes. And then I'm going to just specify the location of my configuration. So this is going to run. I'm running this in debug mode. So we're going to see in just a second those nodes get created. You can see there that it's kind of setting everything up. And if I bounce over here, you can see that already my client nodes have been created. Let's just bounce very, very quickly over to the Nomad UI and see if this is up yet. So this is going to take just, oh, there we go. So Nomad is now available. And what we're going to see in a second is Jumppad is going to recognize that Nomad is up and is healthy, and all of those clients are available for work. And it's going to start applying some jobs to this.
One question I do have about the clients is, I don't know if you remember earlier on, I was mentioning the relationship between servers and clients with Nomad. Now, the way that it works is with your clients, you can install things like Docker, you can install like Java, if you want to run like .jar files and so on and so forth, right? And in order for a Nomad server to schedule your job to a client, the client has to meet certain requirements for the job, right? So if you want to run it as a Docker image, you need Docker installed. You need some sort of container runtime installed, right? So I'm curious, when it deploys these client nodes, does it deploy client nodes with all the bells and whistles, or, you know, is there an extra piece of configuration we have to do? Nick, if you watch this, it'd be great to know that.
Configuration. And we'll see that happening in just a second. So it's just going through and it's setting that up now. Now, while it does that, let's just quickly look at the configuration a little bit more. So in terms of the configuration, I said that we're going to run that job, and that's the job that's going to be specified here. Now, to get access to this job, what we can do is specify an ingress. So an ingress allows us to route from our local machine into the Nomad cluster. You don't need to worry about any sort of load balancing or anything like that just to get access to your work. And it uses this convention here where I can use named ports, which is a convention in Nomad. And then I just specify the job, the group, and the task of the allocation that I want to route to. The port here, 1990, is going to be the port that I'm going to expose locally. And if I just refresh my browser there, you can see that we've now got that workload is up and running and everything's been applied. So if I go back over to my browser, and let me just clear the output there, do curl localhost 1990, you can see there that we've routed the traffic automatically into our Nomad cluster. And that's cool. So that's the basic features of Nomad cluster. But what if we want to do something a little bit special? So what if I want to scale my Nomad cluster? Well, what I can actually do is I can just change the number of client nodes. I'm going to change it to 5. And what Jumppad is going to do is it's going to automatically reconfigure the cluster and add the additional nodes. And you can see there that it's done it, and it did it, very, very quickly. If I go over to the clients in my Nomad UI, what we're going to see in a second is that is going to refresh, and there we go. You can now see the additional clients. Likewise, what I can do is I can also scale that down. So let's scale that down to a number of 1 nodes. And we'll do that like that. And again, Jumppad is going to automatically reconfigure the cluster, and it's going to scale it down from the 5 nodes that we had. You can see they're getting removed there, and it'll scale it down to 1. So it just gives you that ability that if you need to play around with scale, or you want to simulate a cluster scaling up and down, it's very easy to do. And that's pretty much it for the Nomad resource. Check out all of the other resources, but I think this is a great improvement over the first version that we released.
That is amazing. Absolutely amazing. I agree with Nick. Shipyard was really, really good. There's nothing better than Shipyard until they came out with Jumppad. Anyway, let's head back to our terminal and see if we have joy, and we do not. What is the issue? Connector is not healthy. I am not sure what that's on about. So what we'll do is we'll do a Jumppad down to destroy it all, and then I'll enable debug mode and see if it tells us anything useful. Right. It could be. It looks like I already had a blueprint running in the background from before, right? So let me just enable debug mode. So to do that, we just run export, and the variable is log level, and that equals debug. So we'll just run that. Let's clear the screen. And let's run Jumppad up again and see if we can get any clues as to why that failed. It's probably because I had a blueprint already running without even realizing, and that might have caused some issues here and there. So we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't take long, but it's performing a Nomad health check at the moment. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple just to get your Nomad environment up and running. I think this is way more flexible than Nomad.dev. As good as Nomad Dev is, and it's fantastic, just that it's deployed. So yeah, as good as Nomad Dev is, I think the fact that we can scale the nodes quite easily on this, and it's taken what? How long did that take? A few seconds, not even a minute for that to run. So the question I have here is that running on the usual port? And I'm not sure if that is or not. We'll find out. So localhost, and the usual port for Nomad is 4646. And yes, it is. That's amazing. So let's, we'll just boost the size of the screen. Okay. So, and these are our clients. This is the server here. That's what's running. And these are our 3 client nodes. Let me click into them and see if it tells us anything interesting. Maybe it will have some information. So the question I was asking Nick earlier on as to the clients, what do they have installed in terms of the drivers? It looks like it has all of the basic ones installed. So you have Docker, You have exec Java, mock driver, QEMU, and raw exec. So it's all there. So it's a fully fledged Nomad client, which is amazing. Looks like it might even have console connect. I don't really understand all this. We can play all around this in a future episode. But I think for now, we're going to wrap this episode here because that was our first task, right? If we kind of head back to our Excalibur, that was what we were aiming to do today. Is we were aiming to get these Nomad servers and Nomad clients up and running. The only thing I'd say is I think it's only one server that's running and not a cluster of 3. Let me just check. Yeah, so it is only one server that's running. Matter of fact, before we wrap the episode, let me see, is there a way to customize how many servers we have? Hang on, let's start again. So on this page here, we have, let's get the music running again. So we have client nodes. I would kind of expect server nodes as well. Yeah, I don't see anything about servers here. If you can specify how many servers are in a cluster. So yeah, it doesn't look like it. I'll double check with Nick. Again, Nick, if you're watching this, let us know. So I think what we can do in a future episode is we can mess around with this server config and the client config. Now, the reason why is we've talked about the Vault integration. You need to enable some stuff in the config, right? You need to put a Vault stanza and configure connectivity, so on and so forth. So what we'll do is, I'm not really sure if this will work or not, but we'll try integrating that with a Vault that I have running in HCP. And yeah, we'll go from there. And then once that's done, we'll see if we can deploy a version of our microservice to our Nomad cluster. But that is it for this episode of The Startup. Hope you found that useful. Hope you enjoyed it. This has been a lot of fun, just trying to figure this out. We're just kind of YOLOing this. So yeah, if you have any questions for the next episode, leave them in the comments. I'll try to read them before the next episode. If not, then maybe we'll do a special episode where I just kind of go through the questions and I answer them. Maybe I'll even bring Nick on and Eric on to help us answer some of these questions. But until then, peace out.